Thank you for joining us for February session of Design Dialogues. Today we're going to be talking about something that's really unique to the outdoor kitchen portion of design, because we've really found that it doesn't particularly land in one person's domain. So we have interior designers that we work with, we have landscape architects that we work with, architects, builders. It tends to really, depending who's working on the project, it can really fall in so many different hands. And so we have a panelist or a list of panelists today who represent different industries within the outdoor kitchen design space and who all work really closely together. So I'm excited to see and hear what they have to say about working with each other, as well as just this like really unique portion of outdoor kitchen design. So I'll introduce myself first. My name is Ashley Smith. I'm the Director of Architect and Designer Partnerships for Urban Bonfire and Kalamazoo. We are two outdoor kitchen design and manufacturing companies. We have worked with these lovely people before, so hopefully they'll have nice things to say about our products, but we're really here today to learn more about the process and how they all work together. So I have three panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves, and I'll start off with Sarah if you want to give us a brief overview of who you are and what you do.
So my name is Sarah Ty. I am a landscape architect and one of the owners of Lionheart Places and Connect One Design. And we practice in Colorado as well as Texas and kind of throughout the whole region in between.
Amazing. Scott, do you want to go next? Give a brief introduction.
Yes, Scott McHale, partner and director of design, principal at Z-Group Architects and Interiors. And we work with Sarah and Sebastian and have worked with Ashley and are excited to be on this together.
Thank you for being here. Sebastian, you want to wrap it up with a quick intro?
Yeah, Sebastian Monadowicz, owner of Type 5 Builders. We specialize in high-end custom residential homes in the Aspen, Snowmass, Pickens County area of Colorado, and work with Z Group on projects, anything from remodel to large-scale new builds, and with Connect One on any aspect of planning, design, and installation of items such as pools, outdoor, like you talked about, kitchens, and general landscaping components, fencing, and all aspects of exterior architecture. And we appreciate working with them and being here with you.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today to all three of you. I very much appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So I'm going to pose this question to all of you to kind of just start off the conversation. It'll get us going. But so as I was saying before, considering that the outdoor kitchen often crosses disciplinary lines, at what point in the design process do you believe each profession, so architecture, landscape architecture, contractor, builder, should ideally be engaged, and how do you determine which firm should take the lead on the overall vision? Scott, I'm going to pose that to you first. Let me know if you want me to repeat any part of it or if you're good to go.
No, good to go. In general, for us, we're always trying to stress on the team collaborative process. So for us, it's always the earlier the better. It doesn't always work out, so it depends on the team makeup, how the project was, how we engage with the project and the client, and then how much. As far as outdoor kitchens and outdoor areas, it's a matter of importance also. So the sooner the better, but it's as soon as we have a team assembled. It could be after schematic design. We would have the full team assembled. But yeah, in general, is when we can do it and get together, it makes it better overall.
I agree with that, and especially.
Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that especially when you have a residence that is more complex or has a more nuanced need for the site, like this image that's up on the screen right now is a pretty nuanced site. And I think having the full team assembled, including the construction team, as early on in the process leads to absolutely the smoothest design and build.
This is what we always say on the outdoor kitchen portion as well. The earlier that you can bring in our team, the better, just because we can get ahead of some of those things that maybe you haven't thought about, or, this is all we do all day, every day. So you want to bring in the experts as early as you can. Yes, we've certainly seen that too. Sebastian, was there anything that you wanted to add there?
I agree that having a specialty consultant, if there's going to be components that interrelate to a special piece of equipment, whether it be a pool or spa or such as what you sell in terms of specific equipment and how it's going to integrate into the architecture. A lot of what we do is poured concrete or masonry style enclosures, and that is a detail that takes a lot of coordination and good to get ahead of because you can't get back from it. And those are the things that we really want to try and work through ahead of time because of the cost implication, time, and detail aspect to it. So I think those are things to get ahead of on specific things like, let's say, like a kitchen.
So in a case like that, you know, obviously you work with Scott and Sarah pretty directly. If you're working with other architects, how do you get around that? Like, how do you get around getting on a site and realizing that there was a portion maybe that you weren't a part of from the beginning? Sorry, I'm already going off script here, but it just made me think of another question. You know, if you get onto a site and then you realize that maybe there was a lot more work than what you had originally anticipated and you have to make adjustments and things, how does that relationship work? Is that something that is just left to you that you make these decisions on, or do you have to go back and collaborate with the landscape architect or the architect that you're working with?
We would always want to collaborate. When we run into a situation where there's a challenge to be solved, we like to at least provide solutions. We want to be solution based from our side of it and provide the design team, whether it be architect or landscape architect, with options of how to solve the problem in real time so they can review what we consider to be a good solution, and then they can give or impart their expertise on how to actually move forward and execute the final install. And so that's how we try and work, where we get ahead of it. Instead of just asking the question, we try and provide our input on how to best solve it.
Scott, I imagine that's extremely beneficial to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody
Again,
who
just
comes with solutions.
that's right. And that's why we love working with Sebastian. We get a lot of that general involvement. We bring the contractors on as early as possible, so there is that collaborative process, and then it doesn't become adversarial at all. Everybody's trying to bring a solution to the table, so that in the end of the day, our clients are happy.
Well, sometimes we don't come on as late as the builder. The landscape architect, not with this team, but the landscape architect is often brought on somewhat late in the process as well, especially after potentially the architectural team has already done concepting for the exterior. And similar to the position that Sebastian gets in with certain detailing on the outside, when you have team members that are brought in later and then issues are flagged, you start playing catch up in anything from, the outdoor kitchen to the hot tub to the pool to the whatever. If an idea has already been semi-sold to the client prior to having the rest of the team on board, and then issues are subsequently flagged, it leaves everyone playing a little bit of catch up, which is why we like to come on as early as possible. And then, as Sebastian said, identify the assemblies that we might be working with as early as possible so that we can bring on those specific experts as well, whether it's our kitchen, whether it's our hot tub, whether it's our, custom planter manufacturer, whatever.
Yeah, we experience this a lot too, that the outdoor kitchen tends to be the last part of the landscaping. So it's all of the landscaping gets done, and then you get to the kitchen portion of it. And so I understand that very much, Sarah. And yeah, like we said, the earlier that we can get involved, then the smoother that it can go, and the more enjoyable I think the experience is for the client as well. Instead of you get to this point and it's like, okay, now the landscape architecture gets to start, and then you're immediately starting with all of these things that you might need to backtrack on. So certainly can make a smoother process, hopefully, and better experience. So this leads me into my next question, which is, what is the most critical point of handover or communication between the disciplines to prevent scope gaps or overlaps? Based on what you're saying, there's not really a point of handover fully. You're kind of all working together. But I'm going to say particularly when you're concerning mechanical, electrical, plumbing, anything basically that you need to get in before the site is finished, how does that communication happen, and what's the best timing for that? Sarah, I might start with you on that one.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of like what's the best handoff point, and it's a little bit of like how has there's a lot of tangle of scope when you start to interface exterior elements that are potentially sometimes architecturally attached, um, as well as exterior components that are relying on trades that are primarily interior. So when the gas plumbing guy has to come outside, when the electrician has to come outside, there's a lot of overlap in sets, and so really it's you know the lesson I learn every day but never seems to stick. It's good, effective communication throughout the course of a project, stating, all right, I heard this from the client, this needs to go there. Make sure that the MEP knows that the gas line needs to go on his set, that the electrical knows that the outlets need to go on his set, so it's really just good open communication, and then really, really good drawing coordination at each time you're issuing a set. And that's really what we find the most, is that there's a huge amount of overlap in the kitchen or anything that is exterior, but a little bit more architectural. And so it's less about where the handoff occurs, because there's no real handoff. Everyone's still got separate things on separate sets, but it's just a lot of really good, clear communication, which every day I think, wow, I learned that lesson anew.
Isn't it amazing how many times you can learn the same lesson?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Sebastian, did you want to add anything to that?
So from a standpoint on the drawing sets that we look at and where it really matters from our perspective, the design development stage, really when you're going from DD to CD, from design development drawings to construction documentation, that really is a clear point where we do want to collect all of that information on some form of document, because one, that helps us with pricing. We go to the client and the team with realistic numbers, and then our subcontractors have a good grip on actually what we're installing. And that, to me, so again, not necessarily a handoff, but a good benchmark of where the project is and how well the information's been documented is at that point when you're going into construction documentation, because that's really where the permit drawing set changes into a true construction document set. And from the design standpoint, everyone understanding what that scope is and all of that handshake of all that information is really where that's all collected. And so that's a good point to understand whether the scope is understood or whether there's gaps from a design and documentation standpoint. A little different for me on the execution standpoint. We can talk about that. But I think to answer your question from the design standpoint, what we see from documentation, that's where I think it matters.
And I really like having the contracting team on board as early as possible, because when they do pre-con services, you get a huge amount of value out of their eyes on the document set, identifying overlap, identifying conflicts. And the earlier that Sebastian can identify that there's design overlap or gap or conflict, especially in an area where so many trades come together in something like a kitchen. The earlier you get someone's more external eye on that, I think the better and more smoothly the construction process goes for the client.
Yeah, and Sebastian's spot on with where that's how we align together is for the design development stage. I think, as Sarah said on the previously, is sometimes not all the consultants are brought on board in the beginning. So sometimes for conceptual design and schematic design, it might be just us landscape planners meeting with the owners. Sometimes the builder is part of it, but really contractual wise and actually getting documentation done, it's design development. So in schematics and conceptual, we're envisioning and trying to figure out where things go. We're still moving things around, but where we get more specific with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, we don't want them redesigning the project over and over. So we try to get everything set first in schematic design, And then in design development, we're really documenting all the scope, making sure there are no gaps, and then try to, really firm down who is responsible for this. Is Sarah designing the outdoor kitchen, or is Z Group designing the outdoor kitchen? And so those are the things that we can do. In some cases, we have our clients right now on a project actually designing the outdoor kitchen because he's a chef. So sometimes that too can all come together, and then we would get the design information from them, and then we're responsible for documenting it to make sure it gets built, and then Sebastian can price it up effectively. And when we do the pricing sets, as Sebastian said, the schematic design phase is more of an overview, and then design development is very specific, and then construction documents is what they go to contract with.
And there's definitely a trade that isn't here with us today on the phone, but I think is important in the consideration of the design of the outdoor kitchen, no matter who's doing it, whether it's architecture or landscape architecture, or client led. And that's the civil engineer, because typically when we put the outdoor kitchen somewhere, it is usually on a hard, flat surface. And you definitely run into challenges with how to gracefully route your drainage around the kitchen, or integrate the drainage into the edge of the kitchen at the hardscape plane. We've run into scenarios where we've been working on designing this like beautiful linear outdoor kitchen, and then if the civil engineer is brought on too late in the game to do the final drainage and grading design for submittals, you end up with this slope across the face of the kitchen, and then this like bizarrely uneven toe kick. So there's a lot that actually occurs at the integration of the kitchen to the ground plane as well, which in areas like Aspen, for example, where you're required to have engineered grading and drainage plans for part of your submittals, really ties into the civil engineering work. The snow melting work is also super important if you're in an area where snow melt is utilized. So a lot of that comes into play as well. We don't usually talk about that like a ton with the civil engineering and the grading and the drainage, but for elements like kitchens that do require this kind of flat plane and have these typically very linear, strong lines, what's happening in the ground plane becomes super important.
Definitely. Slope is one of the biggest things that we get questions about when the kitchen has been installed and one end seems like it's on stilts and the other is as low as it can possibly go because there's such an intense drainage pattern. We certainly see that. So Sebastian, the next question I'm gonna pose to you, and basically it's, what are the most common coordination challenges you encounter when integrating elements designed by an architect, such as structural needs, adjacencies to the home, and a landscape architect? So kind of what Sarah was saying, some of those utilities, grading, material transitions to the site.
So other than what Sarah mentioned, building off of that in terms of other consultants, so I think the civil is important, but also the structural engineer. So I think that's where we can run into scope gaps and need to solve for how to do these landscape, hardscape components, because technically they don't need to be structurally engineered. They're not required for permit. They typically are slab on grade, or sometimes because we're in a high frost zone, we have to have shallow footings. But let's say like for a large scale fence that goes around a property, or what we've been talking about, for example, these patios or kitchen type components that are adjacent to a home, pool, spa, things like that are not large scale, they oftentimes are not drawn in the structural drawings interrelated to the foundation. So the foundation drawings are a critical path, and then yet we oftentimes don't see a detail for, let's say, a shallow footing on a substantial fence. A lot of times we do fencing that's out of steel or large scale wood, and it's really high end fences or surrounds and these patios that have slabs or stone on slab. And so we often don't get a really good set of details from the structural engineer. It becomes an afterthought, and we have to go ask for it. And that's, I think, something that, in all these teams, when we come together, that could be maybe more integrated into how all this comes together. And what we've done, on other projects is, we're requesting information and asking for a shallow footing detail on a fence or adjacent to a home, or slabs and patios as they abut to a home that may have a kitchen on it. And those details, they're technically not required, but are very helpful, just like this grading that Sarah was talking about. That structural engineer's design, which wouldn't come from Sarah or Scott, but is a good detail to have, is something that all of us in the industry need to think through and consider, especially in cold climates.
Certainly. I think with outdoor kitchens too, I think one of the unique things, especially when you're working with a modular cabinetry line, which are the two companies that I do, so this is what I have the most experience with, but it's often kind of treated like furniture. Like, sure, you need a gas line, you might need a water line depending if you have a sink or an ice maker or a dishwasher, things like that, but it's essentially just sitting on the built environment, like it's sitting on the space that is already designed. And I think sometimes that can lead people to not thinking about all of those structural elements, like you're saying, Sebastian. And so often we'll see it on a plan, but it's like a little rectangle, and it's like, this is the outdoor kitchen, and that's fine, and we're happy to see that because we're happy to design it. But from what I'm getting from you, Sebastian, the more details that there can be on the kitchen, the more prepared that you can be for it to make sure that everything's in the right spot. If there's supposed to be something, a stone surround around it as an example, then you can get ahead of some of those issues. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's the crux of it, where there's these really expensive, intricate, and long lead items that have to interrelate to the structure. Like, for example, in these images here, that's a board form concrete surround that barbecue had to fit within, and then there's a cabinet next to it with wood doors, and then there's a board form structural concrete wall adjacent to it with a fence on top of it, with a snow melted patio that abuts to that has to touch the house, that they're technically floating. All of it has to be non-connected. And so that's a lot to think through when we build a house like that for all those components. And yeah, we want to be thoughtful about elements that have to tie to that, so that, we don't have fundamental issues that we're then scrambling to try and solve.
Right. This is a good segue into something else that I wanted to talk about, which is essentially like balancing aesthetics with function. So right, I'm trying to frame this properly, just so that to keep the conversation going. But basically, how do you balance aesthetic desires of the client with climate appropriate durable materials that you need, especially in climates like Aspen? Like, I know that you've had a mild winter this year, but you do have crazy fluctuations in temperature. You have snow, you have wind, you have rain, you have everything. I can imagine that that's probably sometimes a difficult decision. I mean, I know that we deal with people who, have a Pinterest board maybe, and they see all of these beautiful images, but all of these homes or all of these kitchens are in Australia, and we are in Canada, as an example. And so it can be very different. It is very different climates, but also the materials that you can use within those scopes are very different. So how do you balance some of that? Sarah, I feel like you're itching to answer this, so go ahead.
I wanted to just actually add to the consideration not just of climate appropriate durability, but also the other part of environmental durability is wildlife. So, if you're designing in a rural area like we often are when we're working in the Aspen area, wildlife is a huge consideration, and not things that you would find in more urban settings like raccoons, but full-on bears. Who can be very aggressive and rough with outdoor kitchens in particular, because they're very tasty. And so it's an interesting, like, multiple interesting points to consider depending on where you're designing, right? So when we're designing up here, we're designing for cold, we're designing for bears. When we're designing in Texas, we're designing materials that don't burn you when you touch them. And so, there's a huge amount of those considerations of, like, in Texas, we're looking for materials that don't get too hot, materials that don't bleach in the sun. In Colorado, we're looking for a whole different palette of materials. And it's super important because, given that the outdoor kitchen is treated a little bit like a piece of furniture when we're speccing it, but, fundamentally has to be as durable as any patio floor, right? It's a real challenge to find those materials that bridge that gap of durability and aesthetics, both on the vertical, siding pieces of the the kitchen, as well as, even more importantly, the top counter aspect of the kitchen. And then the appliances, when you live in an environment where it gets down below freezing, there's certain appliances you have to be really careful that your client understands that they can't use certain things outside during a lot of the year. So your ice makers, much of, your outdoor fridges. We can't have outdoor fridges that remain stocked with food in this area because the bears will get in. So there's a huge amount of thought that has to go into the materiality of the kitchen.
Scott, was
Yeah, and
there anything you wanted to add to what Sarah said?
I think from an aesthetic standpoint, as far as all of us as the design team, including Sebastian, wants it all to look seamless and integrated in the end of the day. So, like he was saying, whether it's a stone veneer or board form concrete, or even if it's custom steel metal, or if it's a modular, actually, like you were mentioning too, is we have to try to integrate that. So how is there? We're trying to get this typically inside-outside connection with the interior design and with the exterior design. And so we can approach it a couple different ways where that cabinetry could be an extension of the interior or it could be set off on its own. So some of the outdoor kitchens are attached to the house, whereas some of them are more remote, out in the open. When it's attached to the house, we're trying to integrate it with the exterior materials. We have to watch, the WUI standards with fires, plus with grease fires from our clients. Our building department is very tough on grills under overhangs, so we're always integrating the hood so that we have a hood over the gas grill and it has to look good. So again, we want to integrate all that design into it. There was a photo that shows one barbecue grill in the background and it just looks like it's part of the wood siding that's under it, but really there's a hood that's been integrated into it, so it feels pretty seamless and minimal. And that's what we're doing. They're not really, sometimes you're not seeing them showcased, but they're just kind of, everything blends together in the aesthetics of the design, and so when they go to use them, they're ready to go. Like Sarah said, for the exterior materials, it's a big deal. Our climate, depending on the exposure, with the sun, the wind, the rain, the snow, it just wreaks havoc on the materials. So that's like, as Sebastian was saying, we're trying to use the stone or concrete or natural stone slabs, the natural materials or the artificial materials, man-made that's out there now. We're always questioning, is this really going to hold up in our climate? Can it handle the heat and the sun?
And the staining, Scott, the staining from a kitchen, like you may have a material that handles the heat and the sun really well, but it's a porous enough stone, natural stone, for example, that like the first burger that hits it, is leaving an ugly mark. So that's, it's pretty complex.
And sometimes we have to do the forensics of what happens. We had a material, an artificial man-made material that they said, this is great to go. And then I went and found out that it wasn't installed properly. They used the wrong adhesive when they attached the countertop slab to the base. And so it cracked and broke apart. So there's just so many different parts that make it look good, but then we want to keep it looking good. So how is it all performed in long term? And we're always asking that and questioning it. And Sebastian and I are always scratching our heads in the end of the day, like, how is this going to work for the client?
How do you learn about new materials? Like, I feel like you said, you test some and maybe they don't work. Like, what brings you back to that? How do you know how to use it for future projects? Like, I find sometimes when people have one bad experience, then they say, like, this product isn't suitable, but maybe it was how it was installed that wasn't done correctly, or it wasn't the right application, or there was something that could have been done better. So how do you navigate that? I guess, Sebastian, I might pose that to you because I feel like you're installing these probably more than anybody else, and you might have a little bit more to say on that side of things. But I guess, like, how do you work together to make sure that the right material is being chosen and that you're using it in the right way?
So the design teams we work with tend to do a lot of research and read up on it. The project managers that we work with from both companies and firms, they tend to do background reading, and so they're basically just scouring either internet or with reps and reviewing how the product works, or going to shows, right? Those expos that we even see you at, right? So we go and learn about all these products. We're talking to the experts that maybe not only sell the product, but that have manufactured it. And so they've had experience from their trial and errors. And then part of it is just us going through trial and error, right? Like Scott said, it doesn't always work out right. And so in the industry, when we've been doing this 25 years, in part, you learn by trial and error. And in our area, what we've found is that products that have mass tend to do better because of that that heat and thaw. So let's say like a countertop, if it's 2 inches or thicker, tends to do better than when you're going to try and do it 3/4 or less outside. Anything thinner tends to just explode just due to the thermal differential. So we try and use materials that are thicker. For patio slabs, we try and use something that's 2 inches or thicker, where we're going to do natural stone. Now there's good products out there that are, let's say, porcelain, that at the 3/4 to 7/8 are actually performing pretty well. But again, then it all has to do with install, and so from these glues and other products, it comes down to expertise and reading specifications and actually installing it per the specification and being able to follow along and follow the rules, as opposed to what we call cowboy the installation. So a lot of it has to do with being diligent about actually doing what the installation requires. So Scott, like what you're saying, it may have actually just been user error, like it wasn't installed properly. And so that's why we have to have a lot of management on our sites. We have full-time superintendents. At all times, we have someone managing our site and our jobs and watching and reviewing and managing the installation, because it's a bit of a handhold to get what we want at that level that we work at. And so that expertise comes from our side, not only from like design overview and design input, but also in execution. We have to actually manage that and really shepherd the install to where it's done even the way the specification states. And so that's part of our job, and the value we try and bring to a job is that we're actually actively managing the installation, so you don't have issues where it just simply wasn't installed properly, and that's why the particular product failed.
The feedback that I'm
And
getting
so
from
something
the
that
manufacturer. Oh, sorry, Sarah. Just have one small
go
point,
ahead.
and then I'll let you go. As from a manufacturer's standpoint, because we do offer the design services, but at the end of the day, we are a manufacturer of our product, and that's front and foremost what we are. Installation documentation seems to be extremely important, and the clearer that we can make it, the easier the product is for all of you to spec and also install and also use. And I think that's extremely valuable information, and we know this in the grand scheme of things, but it's always hearing these specific details and kind of where things can go wrong that really helps on our side, so that we can make sure we're creating the proper documentation for you. Go ahead, Sarah.
To echo something that Sebastian was saying, from a design perspective, prior to doing the detailing, prior to doing the installation, just from a discovery of materials perspective, so you feel like you're keeping your designs fresh. I feel like what Sebastian said about shows is really valid. So, going to, like, I know, Ashley, you're going to be at the home builder show in Orlando. I found that show to be really useful. And other shows that involve the outdoor kitchen industry have been incredibly useful in making connections or in learning about kind of new materials. And then maintaining those ongoing relationships with the product reps that you trust for kind of these non-natural stone type materials. Maintaining the relationships with product reps that that you trust, because they can then bring those products to you, right? I myself am not made of time. And so I don't have as much opportunity as I would like to be scouring the world for new and exciting materials, but I can rely on the product reps that I know are trustworthy to bring the new cool stuff to me, and provide me with valuable information about previous installs, things like that. So that's something that we've found has been hugely beneficial in staying on top of what new trends might be, as well as what new materials or novel installs of existing materials could be.
That's very helpful. I think, once you find somebody that you can trust, just trusting their referral, and they get information from so many other people. So it's really just, so much of it is word of mouth, it sounds like, which is which is amazing, but it's really a trust system. You're suggesting these materials to your clients, and so you need to make sure that they will hold up to what you're saying that they're going to, which is huge, especially in climates that are a little bit more volatile. So
Yeah.
moving beyond
It's hard
function,
to
I'm just
pioneer
curious.
new materials. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, even if you see it at a show, you're not seeing it in a full application, right? Or maybe it's a brand new material that
Yeah.
hasn't been tested as much as you would like yet, but you like the idea of it. I can see that being quite difficult.
Yeah, we have to be careful with the bright, shiny new thing, because our clients expect us to have vetted that and know what's going to work for them and last a long time. A lot of these are second homes and they're generational homes that will live a long time, and they don't get used every day sometimes. So, but when they do want to use it, it has to be ready to go. And then the property managers, may have to keep up with things and keep it going. So yeah, our research is always never ending, and we have to trust the team and all the reps that are out there. As like Sarah said, it's a big deal to make sure we know what's the latest, greatest, but has it been tested, and is it gonna succeed in our environment?
Yeah, certainly. Is there one non-negotiable element or design principle, like from your specific discipline, that you insist upon to ensure an outdoor kitchen is not just functional, but a truly thoughtful, well coordinated, and elevated extension of the home and the landscape? Like, what is the one material or the one thing that you consistently go back to? Scott, I'm going to go to you first for that one.
Ooh, that's a tough question. I don't. To me, there's not one element. It's all tied together. So to me, it wants to be always an integrated design, and every design is different for us. The clients are all different. The site's different. So I can't really pin it down as to one thing. I think it wants to be integrated with the design, and it wants to function in the end of the day, and last. So when all those things can come together, it just works. And when no one's complaining at the end of the day or warranting it because something broke, that's our client satisfaction is the most important thing in the end of the day.
For sure. Are there
Fundamentally, for
certain
us, I think it
materials?
just comes back to. Go ahead.
No, go. You and
I was
Sarah,
going to
go
say,
ahead.
but I know I don't like a little delay with you, so I'm just going to always talk over you, or maybe I'm just not respectful. One of the two. Um, um, for us, it just comes back to really client desires, right? So we can't, it's hard for us to come back to like, it's the one material or it's the one this or it's the one that, because you have a client, like Scott said, you have a client that's a chef and he wants this, and outdoor cooking is his jam. Um, but then you have a client who's like, I need a grill because you kind of have to have a grill, but I don't really want a grill, but I have to, so there's all the in-betweens of like, I have to have a grill because you can't have a house without a grill. And then there's a client that's like, I live to outdoor cook and this is all I do and I entertain. And and so integrating what they need in their outdoor kitchen, which is super different for every client, is probably the most important part to us. Some people want it to be a showpiece. Some people are like, put the grill around the corner so I can make a hot dog on occasion. I never want to see it. So it's so diverse.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I always say in every single one of these that I've done, I think I've said this, the best design is the design that is the best for your client. It has to be specific to the client. Otherwise, it's a generic design. They're less likely to use it, right? So you do have to take their preferences and how they're going to use it into consideration when you're choosing anything. I guess, yeah, I guess what I was
Yeah, if
trying to
there's
get to with this question is
an,
if there's any that you just, and it doesn't need to be a material, it can be a principle. And I think you're answering that by saying that you're kind of adjusting it for every client, but go ahead, Scott.
yeah, I think if there's one, it might be a minor thing. The fact that it's in there. Every project, most clients are going to want a grill. I think from a design standpoint, if we have a grill, we want to build it in. We don't want to just put a freestanding Weber grill. While they do work really well and they last, usually we're trying to build it into the project so that again it just becomes an outdoor kitchen rather than just a barbecue grill that's just out on the patio. I think almost all of our clients would agree. They want it to be there and ready to use. It shouldn't be a showcase as far as like, so to speak, just standing there as a freestanding on wheels. It tries to become integrated when possible. So that that might be maybe the design principle that we try to hold to is can we build it in as much as possible.
We appreciate that. And that is, I think, the biggest shift that I have seen. I've been doing outdoor kitchens specifically for 10 years. And just the number of projects that we get now versus how many we used to get, just asked to be quoted, not that go through, but just the number of kitchens that are just automatically included on a plan now are so much higher than anything that we saw in the past, because it's like you said, people, there might be one. I think people are coming to realize that it can be extremely helpful, and it can encourage you to cook outside, and it can encourage you to get outside. And there's so many benefits to that. And I feel like people are really drawn to that, and just, wellness in general. And I think outdoor kitchens are not really talked about in that wellness category, but I do think that it fits in with that because it's encouraging you to get outside, typically eat healthier. There's so many things that go along with it. I could talk a long time about this, obviously.
I mean,
we do have limited time.
no,
I'm going to go to our last question. At the end, ask questions.
You're hitting on a really good point, though, Ashley. It is asked more and more. I mean, now that, I don't know, since COVID, in some cases, people have kind of redirected what's more important in life. And I think the outdoor experiences and the houses that we do, like you can see here with the indoor-outdoor connections, but also with those kitchens, like how do we spend good quality time with our family and friends? And cooking becomes part of that. The kitchen is integral to a house, and the outdoor kitchen is integral to the house too. So now we're getting more of that, and the technology is keeping up. So we get, the gas grills, but you also get the outdoor pizza ovens. We have the refrigeration, like Sarah said. So now there's wet bars. So that outdoor entertaining becomes a big factor. And so for our clients, it is important when they're entertaining their friends to have all the equipment that they need there so that they're not going back and forth, inside and outside the house. So it is nice to see that technology with equipment is keeping up with the needs. Obviously, it's a supply and demand, but yeah, there's some wonderful outdoor kitchens and kitchen equipment now that we're able to spec out.
This is a perfect segue into the last question that I want to pose to all of you. And so maybe I'll just start with you, Scott. But looking ahead, what are the emerging technology, design methodology, or contracting model that you believe holds the most promise for making the collaboration process more easy? So not necessarily talking about kitchens, but just how the three of you can work together. Are there any technologies, software, tools that you're using to kind of facilitate that process a little bit more that you want to tell people about?
It's always evolving. Trying to keep up with the new technology sometimes is challenging. I think right now it's just communication. Whether we're doing video calls with our clients or meeting in person, we're always trying to meet in person. The internet has done wonderful things. Now AI is taking over in a lot of different cases. So is AI correct in that? So we have to do our research with what it tells us when we use it. So the future is kind of changing as we speak. So I don't know. For us, it's just trying to keep up. We're pretty remote from most folks that are in more of an urban where things are kind of out there more. So we have to do a little bit more of the exploration and try to go to the shows or get on the internet and really meet with the reps to find out what is changing. I think there was a pretty big slowdown with COVID. We lost a lot of that, especially being remote. So now the reps are finally getting out there and they're coming back to us, and they're kind of on. We're back on the radar as far as learning all the new technologies that are out there. So yeah, we're always looking for something. The collaboration's a big deal. So we're always just trying to work with people to make sure that it's a good experience, and then to have those repeat clients is a big deal too.
Yeah, certainly. Sebastian, are there any technologies or anything that you're using on your side to make life easier for you and also for collaboration?
Yeah, so in terms of specific software, a lot of general contractors, at least in our area, uh, use a integrated software to disseminate information to the team or store it for our vendors to gain access to drawings. So something like FieldWire or Procore or some of these other things you may have heard of, that we can upload and download information. So then we give basically a address to the user, right? So the architect or landscape architect, and then they can go extract or upload or download and answer questions. And then we're constantly then archiving, cataloging, and real-time management information for submittals, so then we can go buy product and make sure we're doing it correctly. So that's one thing that I think has been really good to collaborate, is these kind of pieces of software from the GC side. And then the other that I use every day is Bluebeam, and that's a documentation like where there's notation on PDFs, because we don't really work in like the Revit or CAD. I mean, we can, but we tend not to. It's a bit laborious on the general contracting side. And so Bluebeam's actually been a great tool where we can communicate information, design thoughts, draw, and communicate notations and sketches or red lines of a design to help facilitate those solutions. And that's been a great product for me to help ease the communication in drawing form rather than just verbal.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, especially because you must come across so many things on site, and you need somewhere to be able to jot it down, or like a quick place where you know that you can find all of the information. You're not in front of a computer like I am all day, every day, pretty much, except when I'm at trade shows.
And I think, sorry to add to what Sebastian was saying, is in the design sense too, is kind of, I was mentioning the AIs, but with the technologies that's out there, in other words, if we're using Revit or BIM, right, getting the 3D models of the actual appliances or cabinets from your company, say, right? So when we can load those directly into the model, and then now with the rendering capabilities and AI being part of that, it's so much faster, so that we can convey that, the 3D look and feel of it, how it all works and functions immediately to our clients. It's much faster and easier than it used to be. So having access to all those tools is really important to what we're doing. We kind of don't even think about it anymore, because most manufacturers can get us all those 3D models that we can collaborate with. And so those are really important. And then the final rendering, showing that to the client, here's what it's going to look like and feel like, and we can walk them around that or shoot a video of it. It's amazing. It's expected now. And so that's a big part of the design nowadays.
Sarah, was there anything you wanted to add?
Just to build a little bit on what Scott was saying related to BIM, I think that the most exciting trend in creating like truly effective and coordinated documentation for any project is the ability to document together, and to work in 3D as much as possible, like but real-time 3D. And it's not there yet to like really do this fully effectively. Like architects in some trades can work in group Revit models. Somebody played me a tiny violin. Landscape architecture doesn't have a very good BIM system yet, so we're a little bit left out of the game. But I think that it's moving towards building one cohesive picture of a site. So you don't end up with those things like, well, the civil put the drain there and we put the kitchen there and then the gas line went over there instead. We're all building the same thing. And right now we're all building the same idea, but we're building it effectively we're building it separately. And so BIM and the cloud and the ability to work on the cloud together on the exact same model is very exciting. It's not there, but it's very exciting.
Hopefully we'll get
Good
there
point.
soon.
One day. Till then, I'm going to keep playing my tiny violin that landscape architecture left out, but we'll get there.
the people are listening, Sarah. We'll make sure everybody hears this, gets in front of the right people. That was everything that I wanted to cover. So I'm just going to put it out there for anybody who has any questions. Please do post them in the chat. There's the chat, and there's also the Q&A. So feel free to pop it in there. In the meantime, I'm just going to have this screen up here so that you can see the different companies that we're working with here and all of the amazing work that they do. Feel free to check out their websites. We did get a question about the recording, and so I'll just answer that as well in case anybody missed it in the chat. But this is recorded. We will be sending it out to everybody who registered for today, and it will be available to be viewed on our website, hopefully in the next couple of days. I always try to do it within 2 days of when the webinar was done. But if you have any questions that you want to pose to the panelists, please put them in now. And if there is something that comes up a little bit later on, feel free to email me at any time, and I can make sure that the right person gets the question as well. One little more thing that I'll say is just a little plug. We will be at KBIS IBS show in Orlando next week. I will be there, so if you are going, please do come and say hello. I can put the booth number in our email because I don't remember it off the top of my head right now. But it would be great to see you, and if you come to Design Dialogues, I always love to see the names or meet the names that I see within these panels. So it's always good to put a face to a name. Any last remarks that anybody on the panel would like to say as we're waiting to see if any questions come in?
No, thanks for having us. I enjoyed participating. We always enjoy working with you guys.
That's right. It's always a lot of fun. It's nice to have a good team with good experiences, with good people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll know. Yeah, we appreciate it.
It's really fun to see your connection with each other as well. We had some calls obviously before this that not everybody got to see, but you obviously all get along so well and work so well together. And I think this is ultimately what I would love to see across all multidisciplinary teams, just because we're in such a unique position with the Outdoor Kitchen that there's just so much opportunity for collaboration. And I think that really the best outcome can come out of multidisciplinary collaboration. So, you know, so many different people working on it to make sure that it really is the best version of what it can be. So I hope to see more of this. I haven't seen any questions come in. I'm just going to go over to the Q&A side really quickly to see if there's something there, but no, I think we're all good. So thank you again so much to everybody who came on today, and also to our panelists. It's been great chatting with you. Appreciate your time.